Welcome back to another episode of Stori Dental. I'm your host, Bonza, a fourth-year dental student at the University of Maryland School of Dentistry, and today I am joined by my friend, Jeremie Oliver. And how do you say your last name?
Pina, like pina colada.
Pina, okay. And I'm going to do a quick intro for you, and then you can do an intro for yourself. This is a special episode because Jeremie is a special human. And the reason I say this is because you probably don't know anyone that's in the middle of getting their DDS, Doctor of Dental Surgery, has a PhD, has an MBA, and has partially completed an MD. So, Jeremie, I talked to my friend about this episode, and you know what I called you?
What'd you call me?
The Thanos of Degrees. You're the Thanos of Degrees.
Yes,
you're collecting them, dude. No, 100%. And at this point, you have to get your JD. So, but anyway, without further ado, this is Jeremie. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Oh man, thank you. That's definitely too kind. I mean, I'm definitely not as jacked as you. So you're the real Thanos here.
He's lying. He's lying. He actually is too.
But man, it's been a journey, and it's interesting that I really couldn't have planned it this way.
Yeah.
Like if I tried, it's just beyond my ability, comprehension to really go through all these different steps.
Sure.
The way that it's gone, but like I really do got to trust in like a higher power, in God, that kind of orchestrated all of this and made it all possible for me in my life. I really do believe that.
Absolutely, bro.
I start off on a certain path thinking I'm going a certain route, and then an opportunity arises. Yeah. And you gotta kind of ask yourself, gotta ask your higher power, like what that means, and if you're willing to kind of deviate from your initial plan.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm kind of a good case study that you can do that, and a lot of times it'll end up okay. It'll
Sure.
like sometimes it'll be a lot better than what it would have been otherwise. Like I definitely feel that way for myself. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met all the wonderful people here at the University of Maryland. It's just a really amazing journey that brought me to this point.
Yeah.
I could describe it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to like bore people with all the details, but
we'll do it. And we're going to get to that. So let's actually start. Yeah. I want to start from the beginning, because when I was thinking about this last night, I was like, it's funny you say that, like you couldn't have imagined this way. Like imagine a younger Jeremie who wanted to be whatever he wanted to be. Let's just say 10 years old. Did you ever imagine that you would be in the process of obtaining so many different degrees and doing so many different things?
No,
like seriously.
No, man. I mean, and people will confirm this, like from my childhood. I was kind of just a jock.
Yeah.
I loved sports. Kind of dreamed about competing on the big stage all the time.
Sure.
Played football, basketball, baseball throughout my life, and like school was fine. I didn't like fail out, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was a brainiac. I wasn't like a lot of these super smart humans that can like code and do all these like next level
Yeah.
things. Like that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like I was doing all right, but like nothing to write home about.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay. So then, so we're going to kind of break down into that journey, but where were you born? Where are you from? And just kind of tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Sure. Yeah. So I kind of have a hard time claiming one city, one state really, but I grew up in the West.
Sure.
So I was born in the Salt Lake City, Utah area, but we only lived there for about a year.
Yeah.
And then we moved down to San Diego when I was a kid. And that region really resonates with me for a lot of different reasons. Like half my family is from there. My extended family all, grew up, and a lot of them are still based in Southern California.
Yeah.
So those initial kind of formative elementary years for me in the San Diego area, and visiting Palm Springs and Los Angeles County a lot, and Orange County, it laid this like baseline love for the sun, for the beach, for kind of work hard, play hard mentality. And like that's just kind of like a part of my soul, I think. Yeah. And like, I'm always trying to go back there. Like every opportunity I can get, I just want to like get back to the beach, get back to SoCal,
Absolutely.
And it's just like.
Do you go back often? Have you been back recently?
Most recently I went back, brought my whole family back. We did, when you prepare for, OMFS, oral maxillofacial surgery residency, you got to do these like week-long externships. Okay. Where you like apply at these hospitals that host residency programs, and you essentially get to stay there for a week and work with the residents, work with the faculty. They get to know you while you get to know them.
Yeah.
And it's all on your dime, so you got to like kind of coordinate it, and it's not easy to coordinate, but I applied and was able to do one at UCLA.
Wow.
So we went and stayed in the area. I drove into Ronald Reagan Medical Center every morning, and it was I rounded with the residents, like scrubbed in the OR, like did extractions in the sedation clinic, and it was awesome. I mean, it was a phenomenal week.
That was all work though, no play. Did you do anything?
Well, we got there a little early, and we did like Disneyland on my daughter's birthday, which was like the highlight. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, to see her all like dolled up like a princess at her 3-year-old birthday. It was incredible. I mean, that's what life's all about. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, all about the family.
You have such a beautiful family. Like, yeah. And it's funny too, because we talked about this last time, and to be completely transparent, we've shot an initial episode of this, but due to some unfortunate events, we had to
just failed. I didn't do well. That's why
No,
had to scrap
you're
it.
You're fine. But due to some unfortunate events, we had to reshoot this. But, I remember us talking last time about the first time we met, and like the first day of dental school was you have your wife and you having a baby. Isn't that crazy?
Oh yeah, I missed orientation, man. I wasn't there.
That's a good. I'm sure the dean was like, I think we can excuse it this time.
It was a good excuse, yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. So then let's kind of the thing that I really want people to pull away from this is that you can do a lot of things, right? You can have a lot of passions, and so let's just kind of go step by step and talk about how your first encounter with some of these passions, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're in academia and you're an undergrad and you're thinking about what you want to do post grad or like work wise, what are you thinking at that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of a turning point for me. I initially went out to college, maybe feeding that like desire to be out in the sun. I went to college in Hawaii, of all places, on the island of Oahu, and this was kind of a leap of faith. I'd never even been there before, but, I applied to school there at Brigham Young University. They have a campus out there in Hawaii, and was accepted and said, you know what? I think this would be a good opportunity. I might as well go. Yeah. And so spent a year out there, and it was kind of like a year to kind of find myself. Sure. I wasn't super dedicated academically yet. I was kind of finding my way. Still super focused on sports and, living a good life. And it wasn't until I actually took a pause in my education. I went off and did like a missionary trip for my church, spent 2 years down in Brazil. Yeah. So that was after my freshman year of college. I took a break, was assigned to work in Brazil. You kind of put yourself out there and they assign you wherever the need is. Yeah. So that was where they placed me.
And you're Mormon, right?
Yeah, yep. yeah. Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it's a long name, but we're it's a great opportunity just to like be thrown into something totally different, totally outside your comfort zone most of the time, and different culture for my particular instance, different language. Sure. you get to learn so many different things, right? And never spoken Portuguese in my life, but like you get thrown down in Brazil, you got to just like learn on the fly. Yeah. And so anyways, like I saw a lot of like suffering down there. Like it's a very much a tiered society from what I could tell. Sure. In the regions where I served, at least, it was like there's a lot of very wealthy people, and then there's a lot of very poor people. And of course, like it's mostly the poor people that want to talk to us. And so like walking around the streets of Brazil, just kind of getting to know people from all walks of life, all different circumstances, it gave me an itch to do something in the realm of like, human service. And in particular, healthcare stood out as something that I could make an impact in the world. Yeah. And so I get back after those 2 years, re-enroll in school, go back to Hawaii because I loved it. Mm-hmm. But this time with like a fire in my soul, I was like, okay, I'm going to get straight A's now. And like, I'm going to like go to medical school. Like that's my goal. Yeah. And I had to make up for like some B's and C's my freshman year, but like I put my pedal to the metal and like didn't get another B after that. Just like totally dialed in.
And that's just from the passion and the calling that you felt from your time there, helping those people out.
Yeah. I really attribute it to that. In high school, I enjoyed like sciences and anatomy, but it wasn't really this confirmed thing yet until I went off and like saw real humans in real situations, real suffering. Yeah. I can like totally tie it back to those years that really framed the rest of my life. Years.
And it's called a mission, right?
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. A mission. And so kind of, the purpose of Stori is not only to share stories from dental school and with dental patients, but also like where people come from, right? Who the dentist is. So kind of tell us a little bit about what a mission is, what that looks like for you, and then just kind of tell us more about that.
Absolutely. It's kind of an opportunity for us to follow Jesus Christ in like a very actionable way. And to us, that is doing what he did when he was on earth. And like the main thing that he did was teach. Yeah. Right. Like he came to earth, as described in the New Testament, came to earth and just kind of showed us what a perfect life is. And like, we're never gonna be able to do that, but we can at least teach about his life. Yeah. And kind of like be among people that are, suffering of all sorts of, maladies, like mental, physical, whatever it might be. So for us, a mission is really a time to like put aside 2 years of your life, or a year and a half if you're a young woman. They're also called to serve if they would like to just put aside your own desires in life, put aside your own goals and aspirations, and just go all in on service. And that is something that can be challenging, and especially in today's world where we're very focused on, reaching the next goal in our lives. And like, we're so interconnected with social media, and like, you got to give all that up, for 2 years. So I didn't like touch my Facebook. Like Instagram was just kind of becoming a thing, so I wasn't really on it yet. But like we could email once a week. Like that was it. Like, we're not on the computers. You have like an issued like brick cell phone, that you can use to call people, but you can't be calling your mom. You can't be calling your friends, your girlfriend, whatever. Like, you can write letters and you can write emails once a week. Yeah. And like the rest of the time, 24/7, like you're on call for the Lord, like you have like a very regimented schedule. Yeah. Wake up at 6 a.m. Like you study for the first couple hours of every day, and then you go out and you have appointments with people, you interact with people, you like teach them, you invite them to follow Jesus Christ and be baptized. It's like a very, it's a very structured thing. For 2 straight years. Wow. And I guess one question that I have, because I just thought about this. So then who can you contact then? Because you said you're not contacting your parents on the phone, right? That once a week. Right. Or is it an email? I'm sorry, email address. Yeah, email. You can email, in our mission, every mission's like slightly different in the rules, but like ours was, we had like an hour and a half that we could go like pay the internet cafe, like they're called internet cafes, where you can like pay per time to use a computer. Yeah. Uh-huh. And so I'd go and like pay like in coins for like the hour and a half of time to like be online, log into your like church specific email account, and like you can send an email update to like anyone you're communicating with, whether it be like some people were dating people. I wasn't dating anyone, but like if you're, keeping in touch with people of some kind. And then the 2 exceptions were Mother's Day, you could have a Skype call or a Zoom call. Okay. And then Christmas Day, you could have a Skype call or Zoom call. So it's awesome. Like twice a year, you could have like a video call, and then the rest of the year it's once a week email. Wow. And you could communicate with whoever, but most people it's their family. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow, dude. And that's and I think about that too, and it's like those must have been so formative. And you talk about you leave there and now you just have what feels like a newfound mission. Yeah, that's how it was for me, at least. Yeah. And that's powerful too, I have to say, because you mentioned the social media age that we live in now. Like, people can't get away from their phone. Like, even me. I mean, I can't get away. And even if you're like being quote unquote productive, it's just like it's this thing that's in your hand that's just taking so much of your energy. Oh yeah. And it's exhausting. But so you come back from your mission. You kind of have this new goal, and that's just to finish, get the best grades you can, and go off and be a physician, right? Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah. So straight out, I didn't take any more gap years. Like, I powered through the rest of undergrad, like got research internships because I felt this drive to like innovate, you know, that was like top of mind. It's like, I could cram all these facts in my head. I could take this MCAT exam, but like, what am I actually doing? Like, I actually want to make some sort of contribution to the world. Right. Wow. So that's where like the research side came in. Yeah. It's like, I want to contribute to something novel to be able to make clinical care better. Yeah. Right. And so that's kind of where the bug to like do research came in. But at the time I was applying to MD and MD PhD programs because like I have this desire to be a physician and I also want to innovate. Sure. So I apply, like I get into a handful of programs. So I had to decide like where to go. So I landed in probably the most opposite place from
Hawaii.
Waikiki Beach that I could find. It was Rochester, Minnesota.
Oh my
like
goodness.
middle of the Midwest.
Polar opposite. Literally
like
polar opposite.
Literally, yeah. Like, and I had a rough time with like the climate change, you know, like it was very different. I was so used to like the beautiful terrain of Oahu for 4 years. In Brazil, I mean, that's like tropical. And before that, you know, California and Seattle for my high school years. I mean, I did not know what I was walking into, like climate wise.
A bit of an adjustment for sure.
Yeah, no, 100% adjustment, but great training, like great clinical training. And it was there that I really was able to get involved with great research opportunities too. And like being like a world-renowned medical center, you know, they just have so many resources to support students and people who want to dive deeper into innovating something. Yeah. So that's where the opportunity really came up to combine my MD training with a PhD. Okay. So this is where the journey gets a little complicated here, because like I started out as an MD student, but I requested to go do this PhD after the first 2 years. Okay. And I was looking around at different labs around the country, like not just within the Mayo Clinic system, because by this time I had identified a clinical area that I was really interested in. Yeah, which was cleft lip and cleft palate surgery. And you know, the entire field of plastic surgery really was like my niche interest. Yeah. And this came about at the Mayo Clinic. You could, you know, they allowed us to scrub in from like day one. Like you go get your badge at the office and immediately you're cleared to like go scrub into surgeries. Wow. So like literally my first week as a medical student, I was scrubbing in, like not just retracting, but like suturing, cutting, like they really from day one. Yeah.
That's
like
crazy.
And I mean, they're very careful about it. They train you,
of course,
but like you're there with your hands right in these cases, like in this incredible facility. Yeah. And so I feel very blessed that I got so comfortable over those years there in the surgical environment. And I saw a lot of cool stuff. Like I got to scrub in on neurosurgeries, like cardiothoracic surgeries, like all sorts of things. But what really struck home for me, seeing all these different types of cases, was that I initially thought I'd want to be a neurosurgeon. That was kind of in my mind. And then I started to see that like 80% of their patients, they either didn't survive or they were not functional.
80%,
something like that. I mean, it's not an exact number
of all neurosurgeons, or like whatever specific. Like
you know, there are a lot of subtypes of neurosurgery, like spine and you know vascular neurosurgery and tumor. You know, like there are all these different subtypes. So I'm kind of generalizing here, but
a high percentage,
a very high percentage of you know like severe brain surgery cases, the outcomes aren't great. Sure. You know, and so you as a practitioner, you got to be able to stomach that. You got to be able to like handle like failure from the lens of a lot of, people, and maybe it's not even an objective failure, but it kind of feels like a failure when your patient isn't really functioning that well afterwards. So I started to see, contrasts in different fields, like you look at head and neck cancer patients, like they are a lot of times, very severely functionally deformed when they have like a big cancer of their face or their jaw, right? You've seen this. Yeah. And you can like reconstruct that to the best of your ability, but it's never quite normal, right?
Same,
like there's a lot of deficiency still. Yeah. And so that kind of has a similar flavor where like you're doing a great service, but you're never quite getting that patient back to like form and function peak, normal. Absolutely. So then you contrast that to the cases that I started to see with the plastic surgery team, where we'd have, these babies come in, their parents would bring them in, 10-week-old baby, big, gap in the roof of their mouth and in their lip. Yeah. Totally split open, like such a, at first glance, just a devastating anomaly, right? Defect that, the parents have a hard time coping with, of course. Like they're expecting this perfect, beautiful baby, and the baby is beautiful, but there's an obvious, something's wrong. Yeah. And the fact that you can, within an hour or two, completely, correct normal anatomy of that baby's face and hand them off to the parents in the PACU afterwards. It's just like such an emotional, gratifying moment.
Yeah.
And so I saw that. I was just like, wow, this is very different from like going around the ICU and seeing how poorly the patients are coming out of surgery.
Outcomes,
you know, this is much better. And so then I just got addicted. I was like, everything plastic surgery related, I wanted to get involved with, like, you know, cosmetic, reconstructive, whatever it was. I just loved it. And I realized, okay, if I want to do a PhD in something, it's got to be something in this field.
Because at that moment, you knew, like, you were like, it's not about neurosurgery anymore. It's this.
Yes.
And so actually, too, before we move on, I want to like kind of sit in that for a second. Because you said when you first came in, you had plans of doing MD, PhD, like when you were applying, right?
Yes.
Because you wanted to innovate. And so did you have an idea at that point of what it was that you wanted to innovate, what you want to be involved in? Or was it just a general, I know that I want to help people in some way and I need to figure out which specialty I'm going to do that through?
No, that's a solid question. And I'd say that when I was in undergrad, you know, I didn't have a great concept of what, you know, my big innovation topic would be yet. I knew that I wanted to be trained in the basics, like the fundamentals of research, to be able to then oversee, you know, multiple areas of innovation. I think that was my overall goal, was like, okay, if I have this baseline training, kind of like in dentistry, right? Like you get, you know, baseline fundamental training on how to like use the instruments, how to diagnose and assess a patient,
understand it,
then you can like kind of take it to the next level and like offer your patient more things, right? So like in a way it's kind of similar in research too. You get trained in like fundamental, you know, research principles and techniques. And I did that during undergrad. I had research internships through the National Cancer Institute at their, you know, the University of Hawaii has a really good cancer center. Yeah. And so I got to work with like animal models with cancer, you know, preclinical cancer models in mice and rats. And so we got to like experiment with different techniques, how to diagnose and treat different types of cancer. Okay. And so I kind of had this like baseline foundation, at least, to then apply it to something that maybe was more relevant to what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So you had a research background and you were like, now I'm going to go get this MD.
Yes.
Feel what it feels like to be a doctor, and then kind of merge these two things, right?
Yeah, that was my thought.
And so you realized that, you know, Cleft Palate is what is making you feel fulfilled. And for anyone that doesn't know, that's listening, kind of just in like the most simple terms, what is Cleft Palate?
Absolutely.
Cleft Lip and Palate.
Yeah, should have started there, huh? Yeah. So this is really it's a global health burden happening all over the world, all different populations, you know, very common, where during development, you know, when the fetus is in the womb, there's a critical point, you know, in the first trimester when the little facial structures of the fetus are starting to form and starting to come together. And we learn about the lip and the palate in particular. They are midline structures, so they have to come from two sides and then come together and fuse with each other in order for it to be like a completely closed palate and lip. And there are a number of different things that can impact, you know, the success of these, you know, structures coming and fusing in the midline. Sure. This can be vitamin deficiencies in the mother that don't, you know, that way the vitamins aren't reaching the fetus. It can be toxic exposures like chemicals in the environment.
During pregnancy,
that have been linked to, you know, slowing down the movement of these cells in utero, and then causing this gap to remain in between them. And then also genetics. You know, there's a lot of genes that have been mapped back, like several dozen genes that have now been linked, you know, causatively to the incidence of cleft lip and cleft palate. So they're kind of distinct anomalies. You can have a spectrum of a cleft. You know, it can be just a little notch in your lip, like Joaquin Phoenix has just like a little bit, like it's called a microform cleft. You can kind of see if you stare at his upper lip, like I don't think he had it surgically corrected. You can kind of see it's just like a little notch. Yeah. Where it's like teeny tiny bit versus like, you know, there's a lot of different variations, but you can have even through like the frontal bone of your forehead, it can be clefted, and your like brain can be splayed. Your eyes can be pointing different directions, you know, that's called a Tessier cleft. So there's like a huge spectrum of cleft anomalies, but they all have some similarities in how they are formed. So really like that's when I started to see different types of cases and different people of all ages, like I saw like 30-plus-year-olds come in from the Middle East to the Mayo Clinic to be operated on that had these Tessier clefts where it's like all the way through the frontal bone, eyes are pointing to either side of the room, you know, so we had to like do what's called a box osteotomy, where you like cut around the orbital bone of each of those, you know, eyes, like force them towards the midline, and then physically like place plates and screws to like keep them in place. And then you take shavings of bone from the forehead and like fill in the gaps.
Oh my God.
And like you split the cranial vault anterior and posterior. It's like a crazy procedure.
Yeah.
But I saw these things and I was like, you know, this is like full body transformation, like restoration of health and function and aesthetics. It's like everything that it is holistic care.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful. And so it kind of lit a fire in me to take these topics deeper in the lab, because I saw a lot of shortcomings in the clinic too. Like I saw patients come back after surgery, and surgery doesn't always go perfectly, right? You have like complications that come up. There are like wound healing issues. There are, you know, complications that, you know, need multiple operations to resolve.
Yeah.
And so I saw, you know, we're kind of coming up short in the clinic for these patients. Like what can we change? Like how can we use, you know, basic fundamental biology to like fix this in the clinic? So that was kind of my main question going into my PhD.
Your research question, if you will.
Yeah. It's all about the question, right? You gotta start there. Yeah.
So you get this question, and you've got another fire under you. It's clear what you want to do, and then kind of tell us, you know, what's the next step at that point? How does the journey maybe change at that point?
This is a critical turning point. You know, I've identified the specialty that I want to focus on, right? And now I have to figure out how I'm going to do it, right? So I look around the country at different labs that are studying cleft lip and cleft palate, like the genetics and the molecular biology of these diseases. And I come across this lab that actually was able to deliver a new drug, through the bloodstream of pregnant mice. And the drug made its way from the mother's bloodstream into the fetuses that she was carrying, who had a cleft palate.
Yeah.
So these little babies have a cleft palate, and they delivered a drug, made its way to the fetuses, and by the time they were born, no more cleft palate. Like they cured the cleft palate using a drug before the baby was born. So it basically like resolves the entire conundrum, right? Yeah, you don't even have to do surgery on these kids, right? Like that was the premise of their research study. And of course, there's a ton of questions yet to be answered. Like that's not the end of the story. That's only the beginning. Yeah. But that piqued my interest so much that I reached out to this professor. She's at the University of Utah at the time. And my wife happens to be from Utah. I was born in Utah. My wife grew up in Utah. So I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. She's out there. So why don't we like go visit your parents, you know, and like, let's go like swing by the office of this professor who's running these research trials. And, you know, she allowed me, I just sent a cold email, you know, just like said, hey,
I love it.
Loved your research. Like, I'd love to talk to you about this.
It's my favorite kind of email.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I just shot my shot, you know, just like Kobe teaches us, you know, you just gotta shoot your shot.
A professional
so,
DM.
Yeah. So I just walk into her office and I explain my background, explain what I want to do. And she's just like, well, I kind of stopped taking graduate students a while ago. Like I'm at a different, she was a senior, you know, investigator, like kind of beyond that phase. But I talked to her some more, like we really vibed on a personal level too. And, you know, sure enough, she took me under her wing and allowed me to like do my PhD in her lab. So it just kind of like took off from there. I was like, okay, I found like where I'm going to be for the next few years. And interestingly, she is a dentist and a PhD. So this is kind of my intro to the world of oral health, right? Like I know I want to study cleft lip and cleft palate, thinking I'd go back to medical school, do plastic surgery, and like that's the end of it. But, you know, mentorship is key, right, in our journey. Yeah. So I had found just the best mentor for me in the world. You know, her name's Rena D'Souza. She's the director of the NIDCR, which is the Dental and Craniofacial Research Institute at the NIH. So that's here in Maryland. So the connection here is that a year after I started in her lab, in that very first year, she started to get recruited out to Maryland to the NIH.
Yeah.
And
from Utah. So she was getting
Utah.
recruited from Utah to Maryland.
Yes.
So you were going from Minnesota to Utah to work in her lab.
Yes.
Okay.
So we moved, like got all set up, like, you know, thinking we'd be there for a while, right? And then all of a sudden my boss comes in and says, hey, like, they want me to come to the NIH. Like, do you want to, like, you know, come with me and like set up my lab out there, finish your PhD out there at the NIH. Like they have great resources, you'll thrive, like all this stuff. And I said, well, you know, let me ask my wife. So like, and she was pregnant at the time. So like my wife is like 5 months pregnant. Yeah. And like we have dogs, like we have like a whole setup in Utah.
You're home. Like, it's finally home.
Yeah, it's home. And like we're around all her family, right? Like she's about to give birth, like around her parents or her siblings. Like it's kind of the ideal setup, right? And so I said, hey, look, ball's in your court here. Like we could take this opportunity, or I could like figure something else out here locally. And we could just, you know, we could kind of shift gears. But she's like, no, I mean, this sounds like too big of an opportunity to pass up. So like, let's take it. And so huge kudos to her.
Talk about how selfless. Imagine like
incredibly.
That's
incredibly.
Shout out to your wife, man.
No, can't overemphasize that. Like she's been selfless at every single step. So that's, you know, that's key to, I think, finding success in life is just having the right crew around you.
Yeah.
You know, being able to support, you know, all facets of your life. Your life is not, you know, one side. You know, you got to be able to maintain balance, whatever that looks like, you know, for you on an individual basis.
And she was that balance for you. And so also too,
still is.
You, at this point, are you deciding whether to, and because for anyone that doesn't know, you're still in your MD, but now you're saying you're going to stop your MD and go for your PhD, or what is that?
Yes. So yeah, after I met this professor in Utah, I was like, okay, I'm going to ask her for a hiatus on my MD training.
Okay.
And apply for the PhD program here at the University of Utah.
Got it.
Like I've identified you as a mentor. Like she wrote me a letter of support. Like I've filled out all the application stuff. It's a whole thing like it is for dental school and medical school. And, you know, they accepted me into a PhD program for biomedical engineering. So that's like the discipline, the department that I applied for. Mm-hmm. And, you know, typically those take like 5 to 7 years, you know, depending on, you know, who you work with.
Okay.
And so I started it was actually January of 2020 that I like became a PhD candidate or a PhD student. And then you start your coursework. They have like 1.5 to 2 years of coursework. And then you go into like your full on like dissertation phase where you're doing research in the lab full time. And so during this time, I am being mentored by this like dentist scientist, right? Like showing me all this stuff in the lab and talking to me about the clinic and all of this. And I'm trying to figure out kind of what the next steps are, because we're always thinking ahead, right? We're always thinking a few years ahead. I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to be here for a few years, do this PhD, and then what happens next? Like, do I go back to medical school? Do I like, you know, what are my options essentially? So as I was talking to her, you know, talking about the field of cleft care, and really it requires a whole lot of surgery, like beyond just like closing that lip or closing that palate. Like it oftentimes requires jaw surgery and like aligning the bite of these patients. It oftentimes involves a bone graft in that gap in the bone of the maxilla, you know, of the upper arch. And that allows for the teeth to erupt normally, the permanent teeth. And I'm realizing, you know, I know nothing about any of that. Like, what am I talking about? Like I see this in papers, but I don't know what you're talking about, because in medical school, it's like one page of the textbook and then we move on and we don't even learn how to count teeth.
So this is your first encounter with the disconnect that currently exists between medicine and dentistry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was floored. I was just like, wow, like, and I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking if I want to really take care of these kids or anyone that has a cleft, am I really doing them a service if I'm not educated in the oral cavity?
Sure. Like
in all of this anatomy and all of this physiology that happens in this tight space. Like, am I the right provider for them if I'm not properly trained? Yeah. So I really had to like take a look at that. And I identified a few people around the country and around the world that had done both, you know, MD and DDS, and like were trained in, you know, oral maxillofacial surgery and plastic surgery. And like, I just saw that their outcomes were phenomenal. I operated with a few of them. I got to like scrub in and see, firsthand how good they were in the OR.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, this seems like the right path. Like I need to be educated not only in the medicine side, but in the dental side.
And so they were having more successful treatment outcomes with treating cleft lip and palate.
It's kind of a subjective, my own eyes seeing that, but I could tell that they knew their way around the anatomy so well, and they could talk me through exactly what they were doing, and they could offer every phase of cleft care for these patients, like not just one procedure and then hand off to another specialist to do another phase.
Yeah.
Like they could do everything from the primary cleft surgery all the way through the bone grafting and the jaw surgery and the rhinoplasty, like everything those patients needed.
Comprehensive care
from birth till like into their 20s. And so I saw that and I was like, like that's the type of training I want. Like I want to see it from all the angles that I need to give this patient the best outcome. And so it was definitely another leap of faith where I was like, okay, this is going to sound crazy to like anyone who doesn't like know the journey, like I had to like make a PowerPoint for my wife.
I was going to say, what about your wife?
Like I made a pitch deck for my wife, like very, just like, I didn't want to make it too complicated, like just in general, because there's like a lot of steps, but I was just like, I used like the smart art, in PowerPoint and showed like, okay, we're here. And then like, this is one route where we could go like back to med school. And then we go, I go to residency, and then we got to do like fellowship and maybe like do general surgery first and then plastic surgery. And there's like all these different permutations. But then I showed her, look, if I apply to dental school while I'm doing my PhD and they allow me to, do these concurrently, it actually doesn't add any time to our journey. And it allows me to be trained in a much more comprehensive way. Yeah. And allows me to fill in all the gaps in knowledge that I currently have.
And so now you've asked her to move twice.
Yep.
And now you told her, not only are we moving, but now I need to get another doctorate degree.
Yeah.
And she says to you,
she's like, hey, makes sense to me. She's all in.
Did a good presentation. Though,
all right? In. I mean, it just speaks to her because there are moments when I doubt the path and the plan and the journey and myself, and like she's the bedrock that keeps it moving forward, wow. Reminds me of the ultimate goal of, the types of patients that I want to reach and the types of care that I want to be able to provide. Yeah. And if I cut my training short, I won't be able to do all that. Like I'll be able to do a lot of things, and like we're very well trained in each of these phases in the MD world and the DDS world and my PhD. Like some people could say that I could just back out now. I got my PhD already. Like I could go like run a lab somewhere and like do cool innovation stuff.
Finish the MD, just go and then do that.
Yeah. Like a lot of people would encourage that, and they have encouraged that to me. Like a lot of people that I talk to are just like shaking their head at me saying like, why are you doing all this?
Enough's enough.
And I get it. Like I don't share my whole journey with most people because I don't want to like draw attention to it, and I don't want to come across as someone who's like overly zealous. Like I really don't feel like that is my driver. I really go back to the patients, and I go back to impact. Yeah. Like the concept of impact. And I realize that with only segments of training, my impact is very limited. And I've seen that like personally in the clinic, like you can only do so much, right? But if I complete this circle of training that I'm in right now, I feel that my reach is just that much more broad to be able to reach all the patients that I'd like to. Yeah. So that's what keeps me moving forward. So yeah, like kind of long story short is that yes, my wife says yes to the pitch of applying to dental school while I'm doing my PhD, right? And my mentor's on board. Like we reach out to the University of Maryland specifically because we know we're moving here to set up the lab, right? So I'm just like, okay, I can go to Howard or the University of Maryland because those are like options. The two. Yeah. And so I did apply to Howard. They didn't want me for some reason, but but University of Maryland allowed me to interview.
Talk about dropping the ball, Howard. Come on.
Funny. I actually they're probably not going to watch this, but I actually reached out to via LinkedIn. I found their admissions dean. Yeah. When I was applying, and I like wrote a couple paragraphs to them, and I was just like, hey, look, like I would love to come to your school. Like, I know that I may not, fit the typical bill of a student going to your school, but like, here's my background and here's what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm doing my PhD at the NIH. Like, it's just down the road from Howard. It would be very convenient. We could live in DC. She never responded.
Never got back to it.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm here.
Because one day we're going to clip this once you've like innovated this incredible thing that's changing everybody's life, and we're going to send it to Howard. But also, fun fact, Howard didn't even give me an interview, and my cousin graduated from Howard Dental School.
What? Yeah. Oh, well, they dropped the ball.
So we're beefing with Howard. Me and Jeremie are beefing with Howard. I'm joking. Howard is an incredible dental school and makes incredible medical professionals. Black
absolutely
and brown medical professionals. So
absolutely.
So then so you said that it doesn't add any time, like years, but your schedule looks a little different now.
Schedule looks a little different.
Talk to us a little bit about what that schedule was like.
Oh yeah. So when you and I met, 2021 D1s, and we're just like ready to conquer the world, right? Just like got all the energy. So yeah, my schedule looked a little different. I had a kid, that is a different schedule in and of itself. But I was also working full time at the NIH. So, like minimum, like probably 45 to 50 hours a week, in person. And I just kind of had to find the time in the day, So if our lectures were starting at 9 a.m., most of the time I was driving to Bethesda at 4 a.m. and I was running experiments from like 5 to 8 a.m., like doing surgery on animals, like, doing whatever we had to do in the lab, and then hustling from Bethesda to Baltimore, from 8 to 9, trying to beat the rush hour traffic. Sometimes I'd be late, but, I somehow swung it. And then a lot of times if we got out at like 2, I'd go back to the lab, finish up what I had started. Like, luckily I work in a team, so, like the team members really helped me out. But and then a lot of work happens, remotely on the computer, like analyzing data. Like a lot of my PhD was bioinformatics related. So I was doing like large, sequencing studies, learned how to code, learned how to like, make sense of like massive data sets of, gene expression, like all of this crazy stuff. And so I was doing a lot of that during D1 year. I was a little bit spread thin. And so, what I realized was that if I wanted to like finish in a more timely manner and not like kill myself in the process or like sacrifice so much family time, like I should really take a research dedicated year between D1 and D2, before things got too crazy. And so that's where Bonza and I like split, our scrub color here. He moved on to the D2. Ah, man, it was hard. I had to like call Keon like the night that I decided in August. It was like right before we were about to start. Yeah, he's our class president, and I was serving as his VP, and so it was hard. It was heart-wrenching to like tell him. I was just like, man, like this, like I promised I wouldn't be doing this unless it was kind of like the last resort. And I knew that there were pros and cons to the decision, but I think it was the right decision because it allowed me to do like pretty solid work in the lab. And like, I'm really proud of the work that I was able to do. Yeah. And I think that if I tried to do that during the D2 curriculum, especially that fall semester, which is pretty tough. I think I would have burnt out, and that would have been worse, all across the board. So.
And even for like you said, family time, for you to do the best quality work that you can. It's like, it was impossissible. And the craziest thing is that none of us knew that this is what your schedule was, right?
That's right. So, I don't really advertise.
Yeah. So you're sleeping like what, like 4 or 5 hours a night?
Yeah, it's probably averaging 4. Yeah.
Waking up at 4, coming back home at.
It depended because one other thing, not to add more fuel to the fire, but because we moved from Utah kind of abruptly to like set up the lab and everything and get started here in Maryland. I still had another like 9 months of my MBA left that I had started in Utah during my PhD, right? So I started my MBA during my PhD in the evenings. It was like an evening full-time MBA, but it only happened like from 6 to 10 p.m. So I'd like work, 9 to 5 in the lab. Then I'd walk down the hill to the business school at the University of Utah, and I'd go to business school. And like I filled in all these gaps of like, because I was always studying healthcare and like biology and like science. And so I like had no idea how business worked. I had no idea any of that, even though I realized, deep down that like, big science is a business and big healthcare is a business. Dentistry is a business, 100%. The school's a business. You gotta be able to understand how these things come together.
Yeah.
And so my goal was to like form a network of like, broad, business professionals in all different industries, and as well as to make sense of how to really bring an idea that might start in the lab as just like a napkin idea, and have all the tools to be able to like bring it to life and bring it to market in the healthcare industry, because that's really the holy grail for us, right? Like if we as clinicians or scientists have an idea to like impact the world, we can't just like have the idea and call it quits. We got to be able to know how to translate that idea into reality. Yeah. And I think that's through business.
Yeah. Right? Seeing it through, making sure that this idea turns into a product that's actually helping people.
Yes.
And it's so, I mean, and this is just such a common theme in your journey. It's that you want to be involved in every step of it, right? You want to be able to have the best, the outcome be the best outcome. And so when even before you start your DDS, you start doing MBA during your nighttime.
Yes.
For the PhD. So then, because this is really important for people to hear this, and I know you don't like to brag about your schedule, and I didn't even know about it until recently. But again, run us through like your busy day of doing the PhD from when you wake up at 4 o'clock. So the DDS, the PhD, the MBA, all of that, like from the top, please.
All right. Yeah. Let's run through like a typical day.
Sure.
Here. Yeah. Monday through Friday here. So wake up at 4 a.m., get some form of like exercise in there. I wasn't doing well my D1 year. I feel like I've leveled it out now. I'm doing a little bit more consistent, but at the time, waking up at 4, maybe working out for 20, 30 minutes, and then, hitting the road by, 4:45, getting to the lab by 5:30, running experiments. This involved like, we did a lot of, surgery on, mouse embryos, because we are like studying how these facial structures develop in utero, right? So we have to like time the pregnancy of these mice like perfectly to the hour, and then, take them out of the mother at a specific time point, and then study the tissues. So I'd actually use my dental school loops at 5x too. I'd like dissect out these mouse embryos. They're tiny, like smaller than your thumbnail, or pinky nail, like super small. Yeah. And so we'd be dissecting out the palate of these mouse embryos, and then like collecting the tissues and dissociating them down into single cells and analyzing the cells. And so that took several hours, as you can imagine. And then I would hustle to the dental school from there, and maybe get there, whenever stuff was starting for us. It depended on the day.
So 8, 9 a.m.
Yeah, 8, 9 a.m. Yeah. So I'd stay at the dental school as long as, we needed lectures, and then labs in the afternoon, operative, anatomy lab, whatever it was. And then usually, if we got out at 4 p.m., I'd have to go back to Bethesda. So I'd kind of do like a triangle commute, going from Columbia in between DC and Baltimore, go to Baltimore for dental school, Bethesda for the lab, back home to Columbia. And so maybe getting home by like, 6:37 if I'm lucky.
Sure.
That's a pretty reasonable day. But then usually by 7:30, 8 p.m. Eastern time, my business school stuff is starting. And so I'd have a few minutes with my wife and my daughter, and usually, luckily, like these business school courses and group projects were virtual, because they're back in Utah. And so they, allowed me to join virtually. And I would like hold my daughter most of the time while I was in those courses. I'm like interacting and taking notes and stuff, but I'm like holding her at the Zoom camera. So those would run late though. I mean, because it's on Mountain Time, so they wouldn't get out till midnight most of the time, our time, East Coast time. So I'm like on those calls and wrapping up 11 p.m. midnight, and then it starts all over.
And you sustain this for a year.
Yeah.
And then that's when you were saying you realized that for your family, for obvious reasons, you have to step back and do 1 year of your PhD only, right?
Exactly. Yeah. By the end of D1 year, fortunately, the MBA was done. Yeah. I got to finish that. So that was a big burden lifted already in the evenings, but it still left a lot of back and forth between DDS and PhD. Yeah. And so I'm grateful that I could overlap what I did, but I think that extra year, it allowed me to really do a level of work in the lab that wouldn't have been possible. Like I would have been kind of skating by, and it would have been fine. Yeah. But like we ended up publishing in like my top threshold journal for my PhD work. It's called Nature Communications. It's like a nature journal. Like I had like dreamed of publishing in this journal, but I didn't think it'd come real, you know, but it really, I think it's because I took that year to really focus in on my work and gave it like the best possible shot that I could.
Yeah. No.
And it was a lot of work, but it totally paid off, I think.
Dude, yeah. And is still, the journey's still continuing.
It continues,
so
dude,
let's just, dental school and medical school, you're a pretty rare person that can speak on both of them. And so let's just talk about some similarities, some differences, and then ultimately, which one is better? Is it medical school or is it dental school? From the person who can actually answer that question.
Hey, you know, I might make some people mad with that answer. You know?
Say it,
dude. There's some key differences that I would highlight. So, for one, you know, medical school is extremely cognitive, like almost entirely, right? You are trained to think and to go through differentials, you know, differential diagnosis. We do that a little bit in dentistry, but I would say that medical school is like very low threshold of technical skill. You know, you can pretty much get your MD without using your hands very much. Like that's the reality. Like you use a lot of your brain for exams and for, you know, analyzing clinical situations and coming up with the best possible like treatment algorithms and everything. But in terms of technical prowess, you know, there's close to none. You know, you can teach a monkey to do a physical exam, you know, like there's not a whole lot of like.
He's talking to you medical students. He's talking to you guys.
Now contrast that particular thing with dental school. You know, I'd say our days are like, at least in the preclinical years, it was like a 50-50 split, right?
Bro,
between like
dead down the middle,
grinding through like a ton of information that we got to memorize, and you know, very similar topics to what we covered in the preclinical medical school years. I will say that most of the courses in the MD world, like physio, for example, they'll take it just like a few chapters deeper than where we took it in dental school.
Specialists.
The concepts. Yeah. Like that makes sense, right? They got to like really know how to like read that EKG, for example, and like understand all the different like heart blocks and all the different like respiratory dysfunctions and like tidal wave curves. You know, there's all this stuff that you got to like understand at a deeper level than what you probably need to in dentistry.
Yeah.
So while we like touch on it, it's kind of like diet medicine, you know, like you get like the essence, but like not all the calories, you know?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, you know, we have a very high technical bar in dentistry, right? Like very high. And I would even venture to say that there's like a point where if, you know, during those first 2 years, if you can't perform, and I've heard of this and seen this, that if you can't perform to those like millimeter depths and precision, like you probably shouldn't pursue dentistry. Like that is like a cutoff point where you should probably be thinking about something else, right? Yeah. And that's just non-existent in the MD world, right? Like technically, if you're not good with your hands, you go into radiology. You know, like you can still do your MD. Yeah, there's ways around it, but like I don't think you can like really get around using your hands and being technically sound as a DDS, like practicing, you know, dentist. You know, really.
So I'm going to sum up what he just said. Basically, it's that medical students know more, but dental students do more.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I think, and honestly, I'm being facetious because I just love pinning us two against each other, even though I have such deep respect for medical students, although dentistry still is better. I know there are clear differences, and I think that for personality types and people types, there's one for you. So it's important to hear that perspective.
Yes.
And yeah,
that's a point that I should mention this, because this is actually the main point I bring up with the comparison between medicine and dentistry. The technical thing is one thing, but the main point is the mentality. And we kind of talk about this in the dental school bit, right? Like about like motivations for people to choose dentistry versus medicine. Like there's that stereotype. It's like, oh, you didn't get into medical school, so you go to dental school, right? Like that's what people throw out there, but
that's what they're saying.
You know, maybe there's been a few cases of that, but let me throw this one out your way too. Like in my experience, the medical school environment way, way, way less collaborative and way, way, way more egotistical compared to dental. In dentistry, I could turn to any one of the people at the dental school and they will give me as much time as I am requesting to like walk through something, show me something, like talk to me on like a human level. Whereas it's hit or miss in the medical world, to be honest. Wow. Like most of my classmates even like were just out to get their own, you know, they were not looking out for each other and, you know, resentful of other people's success. 100%. Like, sure. I'm not going to name names, but like people were like that. They were vicious. Yeah. And, you know, in dentistry, like I just don't get that same vibe. Like people go into dentistry, I truly believe, to like do something meaningful in society and to have a good life. Whereas in medicine, it's the minority of people that do it for those reasons. Like it is usually to like appease, you know, this like desire to be respected and, you know, kind of, I just think it goes to their heads a lot of time, whether it's in there before or it becomes that way during medicine. I don't know.
Yeah, the process can do it to you too.
It can.
Even to dental students. I mean,
it does happen.
With specialized training, right, which is incredibly dangerous, is once you start to gain a little bit of knowledge, you start to feel like you really know what it is that you're talking about.
That's dangerous. You got to stay humble.
Yeah,
because you're not the smartest person in the room. And
absolutely not.
If you are,
especially if Jeremie's in the room, you are definitely not the smartest person. If Jeremie's in the room,
I'm not, dude. Like, but that's I just feel like I find my people a lot more in the dental crowd, which is interesting, right? Like, you know, objectively, like you read my resume, you think I'm a weirdo, right? Like that, I get that. Like I'm a little bit nervous to apply to OMFS next year because like program directors are going to read my resume. They're going to be like, this guy's probably super weird. Yeah. This guy like has done all this stuff. Like who does that?
Like who, what?
Which is, which, you know, I'm going to have to find a way around that. But like, I try to be like a pretty normal human. And like, I find a lot more normal humans in the dental world compared to the medical world. Yeah. So like really that, I feel like that's the main difference to me.
Yeah.
Like the most meaningful difference, the type of people.
Yeah.
And I just vibe with you all in dental and I love that.
Wow.
I also love that I'll be a part of both worlds, but these are like very down to earth people in dentistry. And I love that.
Yeah. And just to expand on what Jeremie's saying, I think when he's saying normal people, I think he just means that people that are, you know, actually have a life and understand life outside of the work they're doing.
Yes.
As passionate people, we understand that sometimes you can lose a sense of reality when you're just absorbed in what it is. And so I get that. Also too, Jeremie was in special company. He was around, you know, people like me. And,
that's right. And, that's what it was.
And our class. So I really have to shout out our dental class. Class of 2025, I think, is one of the most collaborative, most creative, and just like hardest workers. So it's no coincidence you say that. Also too, dental students can be vicious. Dental students can be selfish. And I think that same culture sometimes does exist, as it may across any professional schooling, but I think it really depends on the energy you put out. That's what you're going to receive. Yeah. And so, Jeremie, I really want to be respectful of your time because, like you said, you've got that beautiful family and kids to go home to. But there was one part of your story that we did kind of skip over that I think is really important. Is on this journey, you did have a moment where you had, you know, some health concerns, some things were happening. And so let's just kind of go back to that because it's really important for people to hear that, you know, on this journey to greater things and making an impact, you know, you can also be going through things and you can rebound from that and do incredible things as you are.
Oh yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up. I kind of forgot about that one. Yeah. It's, but it did play a big role in where I am right now, I believe. So I'm just to kind of paint the picture. I'm in Hawaii in undergrad studying my brain out for the MCAT. You know, massive exam. And, you know, to decompress, like I lived in a really, really crappy house, but it was right on the beach. It was like right on the sand. Yeah. So like our back porch was this beautiful beach on the North Shore of Oahu. Like I still see it when I close my eyes. It was amazing.
I can see you going back right now.
Oh man. Like it's my home. But then of course we'd have like rats climbing in the windows and say it was not a nice house, but it was just like the perfect location. Yeah. But I'm studying on the back porch, and then like, you know, after I grind out a day of like flashcards and practice questions, I'll go like run on the sand, like barefoot. And it just felt great. Like work hard, play hard. Yeah. And, I notice like while I'm running and going through the motions, for this exam, like it's getting harder and harder for me to breathe. And, I noticed like a few days later that I'm like coughing up blood and feeling like pressure build up behind my eyes. And, you know, I go in for some testing at my family doctor's, you know, office down the road, and they notice that my hearing is off in one of my ears. Okay. And they take a look up inside, you know, my sinuses, and they see, you know, these masses, and they think they're polyps. And so they like give me some steroid sprays to like put up in there. And a few weeks later, they get way worse, and it's like causing pain. Like blood vessels are bursting. Like I'll bend over to like tie my shoe, and blood's just pouring out for like an hour. Like I can't get it to stop, and I'm like coughing up the blood, and like it's just like red blood, just like profuse bleeding. And so I'm like, I don't think these are polyps, man. Like, give me something else. And so I finally go into the Queens Medical Center, which is down in Honolulu, and got a CT scan. And turns out these are like big, you know, benign, but masses within my, you know, sphenoid sinus that was like compressing up near my pituitary gland by the sella turcica, you know, right at the skull base, and like eroding the bone around the sinuses. Yeah. And they're like, well, you gotta have surgery, man. We gotta like split your face in half and like have surgery. Fortunately, they were able to go in like as a team effort and go like endonasally, so they didn't have to like do a like facial bipartition, which they had to do back in the day. Mm-hmm. But they were able to go in, 12-hour procedure, you know, blood transfusion because I was bleeding so much. But they were able to, you know, scoop out this tumor that was growing at the base of my skull. Came out, they said it was like the size of like an average chicken breast, like a pretty big tumor.
That's crazy.
Growing in my face. And so this is like literally a couple months before interviews are released for medical school, you know? So like I'm going through this, I'm recovering. I'm like still on opiates when I go out on my first interview. I remember I'm like still hyped up on these pain pills. Yeah. And it was crazy. And, you know, it definitely... It gave me pause to like be in that super vulnerable, like scared position as a patient, and definitely keyed me into the impact of surgery that it can have on people, especially surgery of like the head and neck area. Yeah. So that's kind of what keyed me in even before medical school, thinking like, you know, I want to do something like this, like help people out. And the kind of the second chapter of that story is I get into medical school, I get started during my first year. Things are looking fine. I noticed that, you know, I was starting to get bloody noses again, though. Like I was noticing like, you know, tying my shoe, not quite as severe as last time, but like I'm bleeding. So I go in to like talk to a professor in head and neck surgery about a research project. And I kind of mention it to him. I'm like, hey, yeah, like, you know, I had this tumor and like I was bleeding the other day. And he's like, oh, can I look? So he like walks me, it was like after hours, like 7 p.m. He walks me into the clinic and sticks a scope up there, and like the camera is up on the wall. I'm watching him like with the camera and the scope going up my nose. And he's like, oh, well, there's the scar tissue on your septum and in the sinus. And then he like turns it to the right and he's like, and there's another tumor. And it's like actively bleeding and growing right there. And so I undergo another surgery my first year of medical school at the semester mark. It was right after our wedding. So we got married during the winter break of first year of medical school during M1. Yeah. And then I fly home after a 3-day honeymoon, or fly back to Minnesota, have this massive surgery, go to the ICU, get, you know, transfused, you know, multiple, I think it was another 12 hours. And this time they actually had to like do a Caldwell-Luck approach where they like split your maxilla and like go underneath the nose instead of endonasally. So it was a little bit different approach, but they had to drill out the bone and get all the tumor out. And I hope it's all out now. I don't feel any of the same symptoms. So, I mean, I'm probably due to get an MRI, to be honest, but like I survived, and, you know, it's scary and frustrating, but, you know, I think it definitely impacted, you know, my trajectory and like the way that I saw the type of care that I wanted to give.
Yeah. And I just have to say, dude, yeah, I've heard this story before, but I hear it like the first time. It's crazy. No, seriously. And I just want you to know like how inspiring you are, not only to me, but to so many others. You know, the conversations that exist when you're not in the room. And you're somebody who is quiet about these things. But, you know, I wanted to bring you on here because I think it's so important that people hear this, right? People understand that, you know, so many times in life you can take shortcuts. You can just kind of stop short of whatever it is that you want to achieve, or not do it to its fullest form. You know, if you have health impacts, and you kept going on, dude. And so I have a podcast that I listen to. It's called How I Built This by Guy Raz.
I love that podcast.
It's the best podcast ever created.
I started listening in business school.
Greatest podcast.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he ends the episode always with a question, which is your entire life, you know, where you are and where you're headed. How much of that do you attribute to luck? And then how much of that do you attribute to hard work?
Man, I love that question. You know, I'm going to modify his question just a little bit because, you know, luck is a real thing. I definitely want to give credit where credit is due, though. In my situation, I really believe that there's a lot of divine intervention. Like I cannot ignore the fact that things have just worked out despite the trials, despite the roadblocks that could have like completely, you know, turned me away. We didn't even get into everything, dude. Of course, there's more to the story.
There's always
like
more,
there's always more, but like if you had any comprehension, like there were so many reasons for this journey to fail. And I got to give credit to God. I mean, that's my pillar, that's my rock. And like, of course, God opens up doors, like he'll close one and another one opens, you know? So if you want to call that luck, if you're not a believer, that's on you, of course. But like for me, like that goes much, you know, way beyond luck, way beyond what I could have planned and way beyond my own hard work.
Yeah.
I think that the God that I believe in, I feel like he is willing to bless you the harder you work. Like I kind of feel that like my relationship with him is that when I put the work in, I feel like more doors open, and it's not because of my hard work, but it's kind of connected, you know? So I gotta say that the majority is not me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the minority of this situation.
Yeah.
But, you know, hard work's hard work. And like, I think that the more you can, you know, show up and show out, like the more good things are going to happen in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A word of caution to not like overextend that hard work to the point where you are damaging relationships or you are damaging your mental or physical health.
Yeah.
Because that's not worth it, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to serve and to function if you yourself is not taken care of.
Absolutely.
Right? You could be in the lab, you know, hustling and grinding all night, every night. But, you know, what good is that going to do if your brain is just fried?
What you just said is so powerful. My mom always says the same thing. She says that God blesses hard workers and God meets people where they're at.
Love that.
And for some people, it's luck. For some people, it's spiritual, whatever it is. But I think one thing does hold true, and that's you have to figure out what you want in this life, and you have to obsessively work at it. And there's really no way around that. And along the way, you had an incredible support system. Your wife could have said no so many times. I can't imagine how many nights she probably, you know, spent wishing that you were there.
Yeah.
And so I myself have to, you know, really just, I admire your wife, and I have to say shout out to your wife, man, seriously, and your kids and your support system. And, and thank you, dude. Yeah. Thank you for what you did for our class. Again, he held a vice president role while doing this, did so many things. And like you said, like most stories, we didn't even get into half of it. But you kept going, and dude, I'm so appreciative of you. And I am on a mission to make sure that this is received by as many people as possible, posting it on whatever platform, because I think it's so important that people hear your story, man. No, I'm serious, man. And you inspire me, man. And honestly, the minute you leave, I'm getting back to work because there's so much work to be done, man.
Hey, man, if anyone can do it, it's you. Dude. I fully believe in you. I know you got that fire in you too, to innovate, to create something novel and impactful in the world, and I know you can do it.
Wow.
Like, you got all the tools.
Thank you, man.
It's in you.
Thank you, man. I don't take that lightly, man. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Stori Dental. the greatest episode, period.
I don't know.
Seriously. And also too, the finishing to season 1. I couldn't think of like another better way
finale,
to end.
All right.
Yeah, than with you, dude. And thank you so much, Jeremie. That's it.
Man, thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely.
I have all the respect in the world for you.
My guy.